Get her out of my hotel, now!
A CEO throws a black woman out of his 5-star luxury hotel. 20 minutes later, she became his new boss. Trevor Hamilton thought he was protecting his 5-star hotel when he personally threw out the black woman in the burgundy blazer. 20 minutes later, she walked back in as his new regional director. And his career was over. But that's not even the worst part. The security footage revealed something that would shock you about what really happened in that lobby. If you are enjoying this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like the video, and comment where you are watching from. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories. And trust me, you won't want to miss them. Now, let's continue. Trevor Hamilton adjusted his platinum cufflinks and surveyed his kingdom through the massive windows of his corner office. At 42, he commanded the Grand Meridian Hotel with the confidence of a man who'd never been told no. His steel gray suit, tailored on Savile Row during his last London trip, fit his lean 6-foot frame perfectly. Sandy brown hair swept back with just enough gray at the temples to suggest gravitas, and glacier blue eyes that could freeze a subordinate's complaints mid-sentence. The Grand Meridian stretched below him, 37 floors of Chicago's most exclusive hospitality. Every marble surface gleamed under crystal chandeliers. Every gold fixture caught the light just so. Every staff member moved with the precision of a Swiss timepiece. Mr. Hamilton, his assistant Kelly's voice crackled through the intercom. Kelly Morrison had worked for him for 3 years, a sharp-eyed woman in her 30s with auburn hair always pulled into a perfect chignon. She wore wire-rimmed glasses that made her look scholarly, but Trevor knew she had the organizational skills of a military general. The quarterly reports are ready for your review. Send them to my tablet, Trevor replied, his attention caught by something in the lobby far below. Through the atrium's glass ceiling, he could see the evening's guests beginning to arrive. Senators, tech moguls, European royalty, the kind of clientele that paid $5,000 a night for the privilege of breathing the same air as Chicago's elite. Trevor's phone buzzed. A text from his ex-wife Rebecca. Sophie's recital is Thursday at 7. Please don't miss this one. He set the phone aside without responding. His 8-year-old daughter's piano recitals would have to wait. The Meridian required his full attention, especially tonight. He'd heard rumors that International Grandeur Holdings, the parent company that owned his hotel chain, was sending someone for an unannounced inspection. Corporate usually gave him a heads up, but lately they'd been making noises about accountability and cultural assessments. Ridiculous, he muttered, straightening his emerald silk tie. The Grand Meridian had the highest guest satisfaction scores in the chain. What more did they want? A knock interrupted his thoughts. Kelly entered carrying a crystal tumbler of his evening bourbon, Macallan 25, neat. The evening shift reports are in, she said, setting the glass on his mahogany desk. Everything's running smoothly. The Ambassador Suite is hosting the Johnson pharmaceutical family, and the Presidential Suite has that tech entrepreneur from San Francisco. Good. Trevor took a sip of bourbon, savoring the burn. Any issues I should know about? Kelly hesitated, pushing her glasses up her nose. Well, there was one thing. Front desk mentioned a guest who seemed confused about her reservation. Apparently, she insisted she had a booking but wasn't in our system. Trevor's jaw tightened. Did they handle it? Yes, sir. Standard protocol. Offered to help her find accommodations elsewhere. Excellent. Trevor nodded approvingly. The Grand Meridian's reputation depended on maintaining standards. They couldn't have random people wandering into the lobby claiming they belonged there. Anything else? Your 7 p.m. dinner with the Morrison Foundation Board has been moved to the Crimson Room. Chef Laurent prepared the Wagyu specially. Trevor smiled. Everything in his world operated with precision. Every detail managed, every potential problem solved before it could disturb the Meridian's perfect atmosphere. What stories resonate with you most? Tales of redemption or moments when justice is served? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories that remind us of our shared humanity. Dr. Nicole Carter sat in her BMW, hands gripping the steering wheel as Chicago's October wind rattled the windows. Rain streaked the glass, blurring the golden lights of the Grand Meridian Hotel into abstract watercolors. She'd been parked here for 10 minutes, gathering courage she shouldn't need. At 36, Nicole had climbed every ladder corporate America offered. Her dark brown skin carried the confidence of someone who'd earned every degree, every promotion, every moment of respect through sheer brilliance and relentless work. Tonight, she wore a burgundy blazer over a white silk blouse, her natural hair shaped into soft curls that framed her angular face. Gold hoop earrings caught the streetlight, and her brown eyes held the kind of intelligence that made boardrooms go quiet when she spoke. The call had come that morning. "Congratulations, Dr. Carter. The board has approved your appointment as Regional Director of Operations for International Grandeur Holdings North American Division. Your first assignment is a comprehensive assessment of our flagship Chicago property." After 12 years climbing from entry-level marketing coordinator to the C-suite, Nicole had finally broken through. She would oversee 14 luxury hotels across 6 states, with the Grand Meridian as her crown jewel. Her phone buzzed. A text from her best friend Denise. "How's the new job treating you, boss lady?" Nicole smiled despite her nerves. Denise had been her roommate at Northwestern, the only other black woman in their MBA program. They'd supported each other through every obstacle, every microaggression, every moment when they wondered if they were smart enough, tough enough, good enough to make it in spaces that weren't built for them. About to find out, Nicole typed back. "Walking into my new hotel now. You've got this. Those corporate boys don't know what hit them." Nicole laughed, the sound echoing in her car. Denise always knew how to boost her confidence. She checked her appearance in the rearview mirror one more time, applied a fresh coat of berry lipstick, and stepped into the Chicago night. The October air bit through her blazer as she approached the Grand Meridian's entrance. The building rose like a golden tower against the dark sky, its facade a masterpiece of marble and brass. Doormen in royal blue uniforms flanked the entrance, their posture military straight. "Good evening, madam," one of them said, pulling open the heavy glass door. "Thank you." Nicole's heels clicked against the marble as she entered the lobby. The space took her breath away. Soaring ceilings disappeared into shadows broken by massive crystal chandeliers. Italian marble columns supported archways that belonged in a Renaissance palace. Fresh orchids in crystal vases perfumed the air with subtle sweetness. Guests moved through the space like characters in an expensive movie. Women in couture gowns, men in custom suits, everyone speaking in hushed tones that suggested important business. Nicole approached the concierge desk, where a young woman with platinum blonde hair smiled professionally. "Good evening. How may I assist you?" "I'm Dr. Nicole Carter," she said, extending her business card. "I have a reservation under my name." The woman's fingers flew over her keyboard, her smile faltering slightly. "I'm sorry, Dr. Carter, but I don't see any reservation under that name for tonight." Nicole's stomach dropped. "That's impossible. My assistant confirmed everything yesterday. Could you check again?" More typing, more frowning. "I've checked all possible spellings. There's no reservation for Nicole Carter in our system." Could there have been a mistake? Perhaps it's under International Grandeur Holdings. The concierge's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, a flash of something Nicole couldn't quite identify. "Let me speak with my manager." As the woman stepped away, Nicole felt eyes on her. She turned slightly and caught sight of a group of well-dressed guests near the elevator bank. A silver-haired man in a tuxedo leaned toward his companion, whispering something that made the woman glance in Nicole's direction. Nicole straightened her shoulders. She'd dealt with stares before. In boardrooms, at conferences, at country clubs where she was the only face that looked like hers. She'd learned to hold her head high and let her accomplishments speak. The concierge returned with a tall man in his 50s, his name tag reading, Gerald, front desk manager. "Dr. Carter, I understand there's some confusion about your reservation?" "No confusion on my end," Nicole replied calmly. "I have a confirmed reservation for tonight through tomorrow evening. This is my first visit to the property, and I'm quite eager to experience what I've heard are your exceptional accommodations." Gerald's smile seemed strained. "Of course. Let me personally search our system." His fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. After several minutes, he looked up with apologetic eyes. "I'm terribly sorry, Dr. Carter, but we have no record of your reservation. Perhaps there was an error with your booking agent." Nicole felt heat rising in her chest. "I made the reservation myself, directly through your corporate booking system. I have the confirmation number." She pulled out her phone, scrolling through emails until she found the confirmation. "Here. Confirmation number GH 47829 Chi." Gerald examined her phone screen, his brow furrowing. "This confirmation number. It doesn't match our format. I'm afraid this may be fraudulent." The words hit Nicole like ice water. "Fraudulent. I don't mean to suggest you created it intentionally," Gerald said quickly. "But sometimes scam websites create fake confirmation numbers. You may have been the victim of a booking fraud." Nicole's mind raced. The reservation had been made through the company's internal system, using her corporate access codes. There was no possibility of fraud. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," she said, her voice carefully controlled. Is there a problem here?" The voice came from behind her, deep and authoritative. Nicole turned to see a man in an expensive gray suit approaching the desk. Everything about him radiated power, from his confident stride to the way the staff immediately straightened when they saw him. Trevor Hamilton had decided to handle this situation personally. Trevor's eyes swept over the scene with practiced assessment. A woman in business attire at his front desk, his staff looking uncomfortable, other guests beginning to notice. In his world, problems were solved swiftly and quietly, before they could disturb the Meridian's atmosphere of effortless luxury. "Gerald," Trevor said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "What seems to be the issue?" "Mr. Hamilton," Gerald straightened immediately. "This is Dr. Carter. She believes she has a reservation, but we can't locate it in our system." Trevor's gaze fell on Nicole, taking in her burgundy blazer, her confident posture, the way she held her phone like evidence in a courtroom. Something about her presence in his lobby felt wrong. Not the clothes. Those were expensive enough. Not her bearing. She carried herself like someone accustomed to respect. But something deeper, something his gut told him didn't belong in the Grand Meridian's rarefied air. "Dr. Carter," he said, offering a smile that never reached his eyes. "I'm Trevor Hamilton, CEO of the Grand Meridian. I understand you're having some difficulty with your reservation." Nicole turned to face him fully, and Trevor felt an immediate resistance he couldn't name. Her brown eyes met his without flinching, and when she spoke, her voice carried the crisp confidence of someone used to boardrooms. "Mr. Hamilton, thank you for your attention to this matter. I have a confirmed reservation for tonight, but your staff seems unable to locate it." She held up her phone again. "I have the confirmation number right here." Trevor glanced at the screen without really looking. "I see. And where exactly did you make this reservation?" "Through your corporate booking system." "Corporate?" Trevor's eyebrows raised slightly. And you work for? Nicole hesitated for just a moment. She'd planned to reveal her position once she was settled in her room, after she'd had a chance to observe the hotel's operations as a guest first. Standard protocol for unannounced inspections. I work in hospitality management, she said carefully. Trevor's smile tightened. He'd dealt with industry people before, competitors trying to scope out his operation, journalists looking for stories, consultants fishing for contracts. They all had the same rehearsed confidence, the same presumptuous familiarity. I see. He turned to Gerald. Show me the confirmation number. Gerald tilted Nicole's phone toward Trevor, who made a show of studying it. The number meant nothing to him. He didn't memorize booking codes, but he'd learned that projecting expertise was half of leadership. This doesn't appear to be legitimate, he said, handing the phone back to Nicole. I'm afraid someone may have taken advantage of you. Nicole's composure cracked slightly. That's impossible. I made this reservation myself. Ma'am, Trevor's voice took on the patient tone he used with difficult children. I understand this is frustrating, but we simply cannot honor a fraudulent reservation. However, I'd be happy to have my staff help you find appropriate accommodations elsewhere. The word appropriate hung in the air like a challenge. Nicole caught it immediately, recognizing the subtle emphasis, the way his eyes had categorized her from the moment he approached. Appropriate, she repeated, her voice dangerously quiet. Trevor was already turning away, dismissing her. Gerald, please provide Dr. Carter with a list of nearby hotels that might better suit her needs. Around them, the lobby's evening rhythm continued, but Nicole could feel the attention of other guests, the way conversations had quieted, the way the staff exchanged glances. She'd been in enough predominantly white spaces to recognize the signs, the collective holding of breath, the anticipation of a scene. Mr. Hamilton, she called after him. He turned back with visible impatience. Yes. I think there's been a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding, Trevor said, his voice rising just enough to carry to nearby guests, is someone thinking they can show up at the Grand Meridian with a fake reservation and expect us to accommodate fraud. The lobby fell completely silent. Nicole felt every eye on her, felt the burn of humiliation spreading across her chest. In that moment, she saw herself through their eyes, a black woman being accused of fraud in a space where she clearly didn't belong. I am not attempting fraud, she said, her voice steady despite the rage building inside her. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Trevor stepped closer, his height advantage deliberate and intimidating. If you refuse, I'll have security escort you out. Nicole looked around the lobby, at the guests pretending not to stare, at the staff avoiding eye contact, at the marble and gold that suddenly felt like a courthouse where she'd already been found guilty. You're making a mistake, she said quietly. Trevor's laugh was sharp and dismissive. The only mistake would be allowing this disruption to continue. Security. Two men in dark suits appeared with startling speed, their presence causing several guests to step back. Nicole recognized the moment for what it was, a choice between her dignity and a public scene that would follow her forever on social media. That won't be necessary, she said, slipping her phone into her purse. I'll leave. But as she turned toward the exit, something inside her rebelled. She thought of every time she'd swallowed her pride, every microaggression she'd ignored, every moment she'd made herself smaller to make others comfortable. She stopped and turned back to Trevor, who was already dismissing the security guards with a wave. Mr. Hamilton? He looked at her with barely concealed irritation. Ma'am, I thought we agreed. We didn't agree on anything, Nicole said, her voice cutting across the lobby like a blade. But I want you to remember this moment. Remember it exactly as it happened. Trevor's face flushed. Are you threatening me? I'm asking you to remember, Nicole said, walking toward the exit with her head high. Because in about 20 minutes, you're going to wish you had. The glass doors closed behind her with a whisper, sealing her humiliation inside the Grand Meridian's golden walls. In the lobby, guests began to murmur among themselves, their conversations resuming like water flowing around a stone. Trevor watched her retreat through the rain-streaked windows, her burgundy blazer disappearing into the Chicago night. He felt a moment of something. Doubt? Regret? Then pushed it aside. He'd protected his hotel, maintained its standards, ensured that the Grand Meridian remained the exclusive sanctuary his guests expected. "Everything handled, sir?" Gerald asked quietly. "Perfectly," Trevor replied, adjusting his tie. "Now, let's get back to business." But as he walked toward the elevator bank, Trevor couldn't shake the echo of Nicole's final words. "Remember this moment." Something about her voice, about the way she'd said it, felt less like a threat and more like a promise. The elevator doors closed with a soft chime, carrying him back to his office, back to his bourbon, back to his world where everything made sense and everyone knew their place. 20 minutes later, his phone would ring, and nothing would ever make sense again. Trevor poured himself another finger of Macallan, the amber liquid catching the light from his desk lamp. The lobby incident had already faded to background noise in his mind, filed away with a dozen other minor disruptions he'd handled over the years. Fraudulent reservations, gatecrashers, people who simply didn't understand that the Grand Meridian operated on a different level. "Kelly," he called through the intercom. "Cancel my dinner with the Morrison Foundation. I want to review the quarterly projections." "Sir." Kelly's voice carried a note of confusion. "That dinner has been planned for weeks. The board members are already en route." Trevor waved dismissively, though she couldn't see him. "Reschedule. Tonight I want to focus on the numbers." Truth was, he felt energized. There was something satisfying about maintaining standards, about protecting the sanctuary he'd built. The Grand Meridian wasn't just a hotel, it was a statement. A place where Chicago's elite could exist without the complications of the outside world. His computer chimed with a new email. The subject line made him smile. Guest feedback, outstanding service recovery. "Mr. Hamilton," the message read, "I wanted to personally commend you on how professionally you handled the situation in the lobby this evening. As a member of the Chicago Business Council, I appreciate your commitment to maintaining the Meridian's exceptional standards. The way you resolved that issue was exactly what we expect from five-star hospitality. Looking forward to our continued partnership. Harrison Blackwell, Blackwell Industries." Trevor leaned back in his leather chair, satisfaction warming his chest better than the bourbon. This was validation, confirmation that he'd done the right thing. Harrison Blackwell wasn't just any guest. His manufacturing empire employed half of the South Side, and his recommendation carried weight in Chicago's business circles. A knock interrupted his thoughts. Kelly entered, her expression uncharacteristically tense. "Sir, I have the evening reports, but—" She hesitated, pushing her glasses up her nose, a nervous tic Trevor had learned to recognize. "But what?" "Well, Gerald mentioned the incident in the lobby. He seemed concerned about something." Trevor's jaw tightened. Gerald needs to focus on his job, not second-guess management decisions. "Of course, sir. It's just—" Kelly set the reports on his desk, her fingers lingering on the leather portfolio. "The woman, Dr. Carter. Gerald said she seemed very confident about her reservation. Almost like she knew something we didn't." "Kelly." Trevor's voice carried a warning edge. "Are you questioning my judgment?" "No, sir. Never. I just—" She took a breath. "What if she tries to make trouble? Social media, reviews, that sort of thing." Trevor laughed, the sound sharp in the quiet office. Let her try. The Grand Meridian's reputation isn't built on accommodating fraudsters. Besides, who's going to believe her word against mine? Kelly nodded, but her expression remained troubled. Of course, sir. Will there be anything else? Send Gerald up. I want to make sure we're all aligned on tonight's events. After Kelly left, Trevor turned back to his computer, scrolling through guest feedback and occupancy reports. Everything was perfect. 97% occupancy, average room rate of $800, guest satisfaction scores in the 98th percentile. What stories resonate with you most? Moments when someone stands up for what's right, or times when justice finds a way to prevail? Let us know in the comments what you think should happen next. The Grand Meridian was his masterpiece, and he'd protected it tonight. Nothing else mattered. Nicole sat in her car, engine running, hands shaking as she gripped the steering wheel. The leather seat that had felt luxurious an hour ago now felt like a cage. Rain drummed against the windows, each drop echoing the humiliation that burned in her chest. She'd been ejected. Publicly. Accused of fraud in front of dozens of witnesses. Treated like a criminal for the crime of existing in a space that wasn't built for her. Her phone buzzed. Denise again. How did it go? Are you living it up in your fancy suite yet? Nicole stared at the text, unsure how to respond. How do you explain to your best friend that you'd just been discriminated against at the very hotel you were supposed to be running? How do you admit that despite all your degrees, all your accomplishments, all your careful preparation, it had taken exactly 15 minutes for someone to decide you didn't belong? She started typing. There's been a complication. Delete. The hotel made an error with my reservation. Delete. I need to call you. Delete. Finally, she typed. Something happened. I'll call you later. The response came immediately. Nicole, what's wrong? You're scaring me. Nicole set the phone aside without answering. She needed time to think, to process, to figure out her next move. In her purse, her work phone buzzed. The secure line connected to International Grandeur Holdings executive team. She let it go to voicemail. Then it buzzed again. And again. On the fourth call, she answered. Dr. Carter. Nicole. The voice belonged to Patricia Wells, Senior Vice President of Operations and Nicole's new direct supervisor. I've been trying to reach you. How's the Chicago assessment going? Nicole closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the moment. Patricia, we need to talk. Of course. Are you settled in? I know the Grand Meridian can be overwhelming on first visit. It's our crown jewel after all. I'm not settled in. Nicole's voice was carefully controlled. In fact, I was just removed from the property. Silence stretched across the connection. When Patricia spoke again, her voice had shifted into corporate crisis mode. Removed? What do you mean removed? I mean the CEO personally accused me of reservation fraud and had me escorted out by security. That's... Patricia's voice trailed off. Nicole, there must be some mistake. Are you sure you used the corporate booking codes? The question hit like a slap. Even Patricia, who'd championed Nicole's promotion, was questioning her competence. Patricia, Nicole said, her voice dangerously quiet. I've been making hotel reservations since I was a junior executive. I used the proper codes, I have the confirmation, and I was still accused of fraud and publicly humiliated. Of course. I didn't mean to suggest. Nicole, where are you now? In my car. Outside the hotel. Stay right there. I'm conference calling you with legal and corporate security. This is completely unacceptable. As Nicole waited for the call to connect, she stared up at the Grand Meridian's glowing facade. Somewhere in that tower of marble and gold, Trevor Hamilton was probably celebrating his successful defense of the hotel's standards. He had no idea that in the next few minutes, his carefully ordered world was about to collapse. Her work phone buzzed with the incoming conference call. Patricia's voice came through clearly, along with two others Nicole recognized: Legal Counsel Martin Brooks and Head of Corporate Security Jennifer Walsh. "Dr. Carter," Martin's voice was all business. "Can you walk us through exactly what happened?" Nicole took a breath and began to recount the evening's events, from her arrival at the hotel to her ejection from the lobby. As she spoke, she could hear typing in the background, notes being taken, protocols being activated. "And you're certain about the confirmation number?" Jennifer asked. "Completely certain. I can forward you the email right now." "Please do." "Martin, what's our exposure here?" Martin's sigh was audible through the phone. "Potentially massive. If this was discrimination based on race, which it certainly sounds like, we're looking at federal civil rights violations, not to mention the PR nightmare." "What about Hamilton?" Patricia asked. "Has anyone spoken to him since this incident?" "Not yet," Jennifer replied. "But he's about to get a very interesting phone call." Nicole felt a grim satisfaction building in her chest. "What happens now?" "Now," Patricia said. "We fix this. Jennifer, I want a full investigation initiated immediately. Martin, prepare for damage control. And Nicole." "Yes. I want you to go to the Ritz-Carlton downtown. Corporate will cover your stay there tonight. Tomorrow morning, you're going back to the Grand Meridian. But this time, you're going as the regional director." Nicole smiled for the first time since leaving the hotel. "I'll be ready. One more thing," Martin added. "Don't post anything on social media, don't speak to any reporters, and document everything. This is going to get complicated very quickly." After the call ended, Nicole sat in the silence of her car, watching the Grand Meridian's lights blur through the rain-streaked windows. Tomorrow, she would return to that marble lobby. But this time, Trevor Hamilton would learn exactly who he'd thrown out into the Chicago night. She started the engine and pulled away from the curb, leaving the Grand Meridian behind. For now. In 24 hours, she'd be back. The 42nd floor of the Willis Tower hummed with the kind of quiet efficiency that moved billions of dollars across global markets. Nicole stepped off the elevator wearing a charcoal gray power suit, her natural hair styled in a sleek updo that commanded attention. Dark circles under her eyes betrayed a sleepless night, but her stride carried the focused energy of someone ready for war. "Dr. Carter." Patricia Wells emerged from a conference room, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun that matched her expression. At 58, Patricia had climbed through 3 decades of hospitality management, breaking glass ceilings with calculated precision. "Thank you for coming in early." "Patricia." Nicole shook her hand firmly. "I want this resolved quickly." "So do we all." Patricia gestured toward the conference room where 3 people waited around a mahogany table. "I believe you know Martin Brooks from legal." Martin stood, a tall black man in his 40s with wire-rimmed glasses and the bearing of someone who'd spent years in courtrooms. "Dr. Carter, I've reviewed your account from last night. What happened to you was completely unacceptable. And Jennifer Walsh, our head of corporate security." Patricia continued introductions. Jennifer was a compact woman with short auburn hair and the alert eyes of someone who'd spent years in law enforcement. "Dr. Carter, I've already begun pulling the security footage from the Grand Meridian. We should have the video within the hour." The third person at the table was unfamiliar, a young woman with dark skin and intelligent brown eyes behind fashionable glasses. "This is Aisha Patel," Patricia said. "She's our new director of diversity and inclusion. I asked her to join us because this incident raises serious questions about our corporate culture." Aisha stood, extending her hand. Dr. Carter, I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. I've been with the company for 6 months, and I've already identified concerning patterns in guest complaints and employee feedback. Nicole took her seat at the head of the table, a position that felt both natural and weighted with responsibility. What kind of patterns? Aisha opened a tablet, scrolling through data. In the past 18 months, we've received 12 complaints about discriminatory treatment at the Grand Meridian specifically, all from guests of color, all dismissed as misunderstandings by local management. The room fell silent. Martin's pen stopped moving across his legal pad. 12. Patricia's voice was barely controlled. 12 documented complaints, Aisha corrected. The actual number is likely higher, since many guests don't bother filing formal complaints when they feel they won't be heard. Nicole felt ice forming in her stomach. And Trevor Hamilton's response to these complaints? Consistent denial. Every incident was explained away as a booking error, a miscommunication, or a guest misunderstanding hotel policies. Aisha's fingers moved across her tablet. Here's a complaint from August. Dr. and Mrs. Johnson, both physicians from Atlanta, were questioned about their ability to afford the presidential suite despite having a confirmed reservation and platinum loyalty status. What was Hamilton's response? Martin asked. Standard policy verification. No discrimination found. Aisha looked up from her tablet. The Johnsons haven't stayed with any of our properties since. Jennifer leaned forward. How much revenue have we lost from these incidents? Conservatively, about $800,000 in direct bookings, not counting referrals and repeat business. Aisha's voice was clinical, but Nicole could see the anger simmering beneath her professional composure. The Grand Meridian generates $120 million annually. These incidents represent a systemic pattern that's damaging our brand. Patricia rubbed her temples. Why wasn't this escalated to corporate? Because, Nicole said quietly, understanding dawning, Trevor Hamilton controls the narrative. Local management investigates itself and finds no wrongdoing. The complaints disappear into a file somewhere, and corporate never sees the pattern. Martin nodded grimly. It's a perfect system for avoiding accountability. Until now. Nicole's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and felt her blood pressure spike. It's from my assistant. Apparently, there's already chatter on hospitality industry forums about last night. Someone posted about maintaining standards at luxury hotels. Someone? Jennifer asked. A guest who was in the lobby. Harrison Blackwell. Nicole's voice carried disgust. He's praising Trevor for professional service recovery and protecting the hotel's reputation. The room erupted in angry murmurs. Patricia's face flushed with rage. Blackwell Industries has a corporate account with us worth $2.3 million annually, she said. If he's publicly supporting discrimination. We have bigger problems than one corporate account, Martin interrupted. If this story gains traction on social media before we control the narrative, we're looking at a nationwide boycott. Nicole stood and walked to the window, looking down at the Chicago skyline. Somewhere in that maze of steel and glass, Trevor Hamilton was starting his day, probably reviewing revenue reports and congratulating himself on another successful evening of maintaining standards. What's our next move? She asked. Jennifer consulted her notes. I've requested all security footage from the Grand Meridian covering 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. yesterday. I'm also pulling employment records for the front desk staff to see if there's a pattern of discriminatory training or behavior. And I'm preparing a formal investigation file, Martin added. This could become a federal case if we don't handle it properly. Aisha looked up from her tablet. I'd like to interview the staff members who witnessed the incident. Sometimes employees see things differently than management reports them. Nicole turned back to the table. How long before Trevor knows we're investigating? He doesn't know yet, Patricia said. But that changes this morning. I'm calling him personally to inform him that corporate is conducting a review of last night's incident. No. Nicole's voice cut through the room like a blade. Not yet. Everyone stared at her. Patricia frowned. Nicole, we have protocols. And those protocols have allowed this pattern to continue for 18 months. Nicole returned to her seat, her expression steel. I want the security footage first. I want the staff interviews completed. I want everything documented before Trevor has a chance to craft his narrative. Martin nodded slowly. She's right. If we tip him off too early, he'll have time to coach his staff, destroy documents, create reasonable doubt. How long do we have? Patricia asked. Jennifer checked her watch. The security footage should arrive within the hour. Staff interviews could take most of the day. I'd say we need until tomorrow morning to build an airtight case. Fine. Patricia's voice carried the weight of corporate authority. But Nicole, I want you to understand something. This investigation isn't just about last night. It's about whether Trevor Hamilton is fit to represent our company. Nicole met her gaze steadily. I understand completely. Patricia nodded. Good. Because tomorrow morning, you're going back to the Grand Meridian. And this time, Trevor Hamilton is going to learn exactly who he threw out of his hotel. Trevor's morning routine was sacred. Coffee from his personal espresso machine, the Wall Street Journal, and a review of the previous night's revenue reports. The Grand Meridian had generated $347,000 in room revenue the night before. A typical Tuesday for October, well within projected ranges. His computer chimed with a calendar reminder. Staff meeting, 10 a.m., executive conference room. Trevor smiled. This would be an excellent opportunity to reinforce last night's lesson about maintaining standards. The way his staff had handled the fraudulent reservation incident showed they understood the Meridian's values. A knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. Kelly entered carrying a silver coffee service and wearing an expression Trevor couldn't quite read. Your usual, sir, she said, setting the tray on his desk. Ethiopian single origin, black. Excellent. Any urgent messages? Kelly hesitated, arranging the sugar cubes that Trevor never used. Sir, there have been several calls from corporate this morning. Trevor's hand paused halfway to his coffee cup. Corporate. International Grandeur Holdings. 3 different departments have called requesting information about last night's incident. Trevor felt a flicker of unease. Corporate rarely contacted individual properties directly unless there was a significant problem. What kind of information? Security footage, staff schedules, guest complaint logs. Kelly's voice was carefully neutral. And sir, they specifically asked about Dr. Nicole Carter. The coffee suddenly tasted bitter. Trevor set down his cup with deliberate calm. What exactly did they want to know about Dr. Carter? Details about her reservation, the reasons for her removal from the property, any documentation of the incident. Kelly pushed her glasses up her nose. I told them I'd have you call back personally. Trevor's mind raced. How had corporate learned about such a minor incident so quickly? And why were they asking about the woman specifically? Kelly, pull Dr. Carter's information from last night. I want to review exactly what happened. Sir, there isn't any information to pull. We have no record of her in our system. The fake confirmation number she showed us. Did we document that? Kelly's expression grew more troubled. Sir, Gerald mentioned something about that this morning. He said he tried to verify the confirmation number after you left, and what? Well, it appears the number was legitimate. It matched our corporate booking format exactly. Trevor felt the floor shift beneath him. That's impossible. Gerald thought so too. He called our central reservation system to double-check, and they confirmed that Dr. Nicole Carter had a valid reservation for last night, booked through the Executive Access Portal. The Executive Access Portal. That was reserved for VIPs, corporate executives, and board members. Trevor's mouth went dry. Kelly, he said slowly, what exactly is the Executive Access Portal? It's the booking system used by International Grandeur Holdings executives and their guests. Only senior management has access codes. Trevor stared at his assistant, pieces of a puzzle clicking into place in his mind. A woman with executive access codes. Corporate calling to ask specific questions about her. The confidence in her voice when she'd said he would remember this moment. Kelly, get Gerald up here immediately. Yes, sir. After Kelly left, Trevor walked to his window, staring down at the lobby where last night's confrontation had taken place. For the first time since becoming CEO of the Grand Meridian, he felt a cold touch of genuine fear. Who was Dr. Nicole Carter? And why was corporate so interested in what had happened to her? His phone rang. The caller ID showed International Grandeur Holdings, Executive Office. Trevor's hand trembled slightly as he reached for the receiver. Trevor's office, Grand Meridian Hotel. Phone rings. Trevor Hamilton speaking. Mr. Hamilton, this is Patricia Wells, Senior Vice President of Operations for International Grandeur Holdings. The voice on the other end was crisp, professional, and carried an undertone of barely controlled anger. I believe we need to discuss last night's incident involving Dr. Nicole Carter. Trevor's throat felt suddenly dry. Ms. Wells, I'm not sure what you mean by incident. We had a minor issue with a fraudulent reservation that was handled according to standard protocol. The silence on the other end stretched long enough to make Trevor uncomfortable. Mr. Hamilton, Patricia finally said, are you telling me that you personally removed a guest from your property based on the assumption that her reservation was fraudulent? Yes. The confirmation number didn't match our system, and... Did you attempt to verify that confirmation number through our central reservation system? Trevor's mouth opened and closed. No. It was clearly fraudulent. Clearly. Patricia's voice could have frozen Lake Michigan. Mr. Hamilton, Dr. Carter's reservation was booked through our Executive Access Portal using valid corporate credentials. The confirmation number was legitimate. The room seemed to tilt around Trevor. Executive access? Yes. The portal reserved for senior management of International Grandeur Holdings. Patricia's words hit like hammer blows. Mr. Hamilton, exactly who do you think Dr. Nicole Carter is? Trevor sank into his chair, his face pale. I don't know. Then perhaps it's time you learned. Nicole sat across from Aisha Patel, watching security footage on a large monitor. The high-definition cameras had captured every moment of last night's humiliation in crisp detail. Trevor's dismissive gestures, her own carefully controlled responses, the moment when he'd called security. Can you pause it there? Nicole asked, pointing to the screen. When he first approaches the desk. Aisha froze the frame. Trevor's face was clearly visible, his expression already set with prejudgment before he'd spoken a single word to Nicole. Look at his body language, Nicole said quietly. He's already decided I don't belong there. Aisha nodded grimly. I've seen this before. It's what we call instant categorization. Someone makes a snap judgment based on appearance and then seeks evidence to support that judgment while ignoring anything that contradicts it. Nicole leaned back in her chair, studying the frozen image. Tell me about your background, Aisha. How did you end up in diversity and inclusion? Aisha's expression softened slightly. PhD in organizational psychology from Stanford, with a focus on implicit bias in corporate settings. I spent 5 years consulting for Fortune 500 companies before Patricia recruited me specifically to address these kinds of issues. And what did you find when you started reviewing our properties? A pattern. Aisha pulled up a spreadsheet on her tablet. The Grand Meridian has the highest guest complaint rate regarding staff behavior of any property in our portfolio. But those complaints are rarely escalated beyond local management. She swiped to another screen. Trevor Hamilton has been CEO for 4 years. In that time, guest satisfaction scores for minority visitors have dropped 23%, while overall scores have remained steady. Nicole felt a familiar anger building in her chest. So he's been driving away guests of color systematically, and corporate never noticed because the overall numbers looked fine. Exactly. It's death by 1,000 cuts. Each incident seems minor in isolation, but together they represent institutional discrimination. Aisha opened another file. But here's what's really interesting. I pulled Trevor's employment history before he came to the Meridian. Nicole leaned forward. And 3 previous positions. 2 luxury hotels in New York, 1 resort in the Hamptons. At each property, he had similar patterns: complaints from minority guests, staff turnover in positions that interacted with diverse clientele, and a reputation for maintaining exclusivity. How did he keep getting promoted? Because he's good at his job in every other respect. Revenue growth, cost control, VIP relations with wealthy white guests. Aisha's voice carried disgust. In the hospitality industry, profit often overshadows principles. Nicole stared at the screen, seeing Trevor's frozen face with new understanding. So last night wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a career-long pattern. I'm afraid so. Aisha closed the file. But Nicole, there's something else you should know. What? I did some research on you too. Aisha smiled for the first time that morning. Want to know what I found? The auditorium at Northwestern's Kellogg School of Management was packed with MBA candidates, faculty, and business leaders from across Chicago. At the podium, a younger Nicole Carter addressed the crowd with the poise of someone destined for greatness. When I started this program, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the sound system, I was one of only 12 black women in a class of 347 students. I was told by more than one professor that hospitality management wasn't a serious field for someone with my academic credentials. The audience was silent, hanging on every word. But I chose hospitality because I believe in the power of service. I believe that how we treat travelers, people at their most vulnerable, away from home and family, says everything about who we are as a society. She paused, scanning the crowd. Today, I'm graduating summa cum laude with a 3.97 GPA, and I've accepted a position with International Grandeur Holdings. Not because I want to be the first black woman to reach the C-suite in luxury hospitality, but because I want to be the one who makes sure I'm not the last. The standing ovation lasted 3 full minutes. Valedictorian. Nicole laughed, shaking her head. You really did your homework. Summa cum laude from Northwestern, MBA with a focus on international business and organizational leadership. Before that, undergraduate degree from Spelman College in economics and political science. Aisha consulted her notes. You speak 3 languages fluently, you've published papers on cross-cultural hospitality management, and you've been featured in Forbes, Black Enterprise, and Hospitality Executive magazine. Nicole felt a familiar mix of pride and exhaustion. Sounds impressive when you list it all out. It is impressive. But here's what really caught my attention. Aisha pulled up another file. Your master's thesis was titled Implicit Bias in Luxury Hospitality: How Exclusionary Practices Damage Brand Value and Guest Experience. Nicole smiled ruefully. 12 years ago, I wrote about exactly what happened to me last night. Not exactly. Aisha's eyes sparkled. You wrote about how to fix it. Your thesis included a comprehensive training program for identifying and addressing unconscious bias in customer service, which International Grandeur has never implemented. No, but they're about to. Aisha leaned forward conspiratorially. Patricia asked me to review your thesis this morning. She's considering making your bias training program mandatory across all properties. Nicole felt a surge of something she hadn't experienced in years, hope mixed with vindication. You mean Trevor Hamilton's discrimination might actually lead to positive change? If you're willing to fight for it. Before Nicole could respond, Jennifer Walsh burst into the conference room, her face flushed with excitement. Nicole, you need to see this. She set her laptop on the table, the screen showing an email chain. I just finished interviewing Gerald, the front desk manager from last night. And he kept records. Personal records of every incident involving minority guests over the past 2 years. Names, dates, details of what happened, and Trevor's responses. Nicole's heart began to race. How many incidents? Jennifer scrolled through the file. 47 documented cases. Gerald was building evidence because he was planning to file a complaint with the EEOC. 47. Aisha's voice was barely a whisper. It gets better. Jennifer clicked to another email. Gerald sent copies of everything to 3 other department heads: housekeeping, concierge, and guest services. They've all been documenting similar patterns. Nicole stood up, pacing to the window. Below, Chicago stretched out in all directions, a city of neighborhoods and dreams and people trying to make their way in the world. Somewhere out there, 47 other people had experienced what she'd gone through last night. We're not just talking about one incident anymore, she said quietly. We're talking about a systematic culture of discrimination. Jennifer nodded. And Nicole, there's one more thing. Gerald said that several staff members have been waiting for someone with authority to stand up to Trevor. Last night, when you told him he'd remember this moment. What about it? Gerald said it was the first time he'd ever seen Trevor look scared. And for the first time in 2 years, Gerald felt hope. Have you ever had a moment when you realized that your experiences were part of something bigger? Share your thoughts in the comments about how individual actions can create systemic change, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about courage and justice. Nicole turned back to face the room, her expression resolute. Then let's make sure their hope wasn't misplaced. Trevor hung up the phone with Patricia Wells, his hands shaking. The conversation had been brief and devastating. Dr. Nicole Carter was the newly appointed Regional Director of Operations for International Grandeur Holdings' North American Division. She was his boss's boss's boss, and he had thrown her out of his own hotel. Kelly knocked and entered without waiting for permission, followed by Gerald, whose face was pale with anxiety. "Sir," Gerald began, "I need to tell you something about last night." Trevor looked up with hollow eyes. "Let me guess. Dr. Carter's reservation was legitimate." Gerald nodded miserably. "Completely legitimate. Booked through the executive portal with full corporate credentials." "Sir, I tried to tell you." "You tried to tell me what?" Trevor's voice was dangerously quiet. "That she seemed different. confident in a way that suggested she knew something we didn't. "But you were so certain. Get out." Trevor's voice was barely controlled. "Both of you. Get out." After they left, Trevor sat alone in his office, staring at the awards and commendations covering his walls. 4 years of perfect performance reviews. Revenue growth. Guest satisfaction. Industry recognition. All of it about to be destroyed because he couldn't see past his own prejudices. His computer chimed with a new email. The subject line made his blood run cold. Dr. Nicole Carter, Regional Director Profile. With trembling fingers, he opened the attachment. Nicole's corporate headshot smiled back at him. The same confident expression she'd worn in his lobby, the same intelligent eyes that had promised he would remember this moment. Below her photo, her credentials read like a who's who of academic and professional achievement. Northwestern MBA. Spelman graduate. Published researcher. Industry expert. At the bottom of the profile, a single line in bold text. Effective immediately, Dr. Carter will oversee all operational aspects of IGH North American Properties, including executive personnel decisions. Trevor's career wasn't just in jeopardy. It was over. And somewhere in Chicago, the woman he'd humiliated was deciding his fate. The same glass doors that had sealed Nicole's humiliation 20 hours earlier now opened to admit her return. But this time, she wasn't alone. Patricia Wells flanked her right side, silver-haired and stern in a navy Armani suit that commanded respect. To her left, Martin Brooks carried a leather briefcase that contained enough legal documentation to end careers. Behind them, Jennifer Walsh moved with the quiet efficiency of someone accustomed to handling corporate crises. Nicole herself wore a midnight blue power suit with a crimson silk scarf, colors chosen deliberately to project authority and strength. Her natural hair was styled in an elegant twist, and she carried herself with the bearing of someone who belonged in boardrooms and corner offices. The lobby's afternoon light caught the marble surfaces differently than the previous evening's warm glow. Everything seemed sharper, more defined, as if the space itself had been waiting for this moment. Gerald looked up from the concierge desk, his face cycling through recognition, relief, and terror in rapid succession. The young woman beside him, the same one who had questioned Nicole's reservation, went visibly pale. "Dr. Carter," Gerald said, his voice carrying across the lobby. Several guests turned to look. "Gerald." Nicole's voice was warm but professional. "Is Mr. Hamilton available?" I'll call him immediately." Patricia stepped forward, her presence commanding immediate attention from the entire front desk staff. "This is Patricia Wells, Senior Vice President of Operations for International Grandeur Holdings. We're here for an unscheduled operational review." The words "unscheduled operational review" sent a ripple of nervous energy through the lobby staff. In the hospitality industry, those 4 words were corporate code for someone was about to lose their job. Kelly's voice through the intercom was barely steady. "Sir, Dr. Carter is here. With corporate executives." Trevor sat frozen behind his desk, staring at the same awards and commendations that had seemed so important an hour ago. Now they felt like monuments to a career built on sand. "Sir." Kelly's voice came again. "Send them up," Trevor managed to say. He stood and adjusted his tie, a pewter silk number that had cost more than most people's monthly rent. His hands were trembling slightly, and he clasped them behind his back to hide the evidence of his anxiety. The elevator chimed in the distance. Footsteps in the hallway, multiple pairs, moving with purpose. A knock on his door. "Come in." The door opened, and Nicole entered first. For a moment, their eyes met across the expanse of his office, and Trevor felt the full weight of his mistake crash down on him. This wasn't the flustered woman he'd ejected from his lobby. This was Dr. Nicole Carter, Regional Director, holder of advanced degrees, published expert in hospitality management. This was his superior. "Mr. Hamilton," Patricia Wells said, her voice cutting through the tension. "I believe you've met Dr. Carter." Trevor's mouth felt like cotton. "Dr. Carter." Yes." Nicole moved into the office with fluid grace, taking in the space, the leather furniture, the crystal decanter, the view of Chicago that stretched to the horizon. When she spoke, her voice carried the quiet authority of someone accustomed to being listened to. "Mr. Hamilton, thank you for making time to see us." The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. Trevor nodded, unsure whether to offer them seats or wait to be told what to do. Patricia settled the question by taking the chair across from Trevor's desk. "Please, sit, Mr. Hamilton. We have a great deal to discuss." Trevor sat heavily in his own chair, feeling like a student called before the principal. Nicole remained standing, positioning herself near the window where she could observe both Trevor and the view of the lobby far below. Martin Brooks opened his briefcase and removed a thick folder. "Mr. Hamilton, we're here to discuss the incident that occurred in your lobby last evening at approximately 6:35 p.m. Yes. I believe there was some confusion about Dr. Carter's reservation." "There was no confusion," Nicole said quietly, turning from the window. "My reservation was legitimate. You chose to assume otherwise." Trevor's face flushed. "Dr. Carter, I had no idea who you were. If you had known I was a corporate executive, you would have treated me differently?" Nicole's voice was dangerously soft. "Tell me, Mr. Hamilton, how exactly do you determine which guests deserve respectful treatment?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Trevor's mouth opened and closed, but no sound emerged. Patricia leaned forward. "Mr. Hamilton, in the past 18 months, this property has received 47 documented complaints regarding discriminatory treatment of minority guests. Were you aware of this pattern?" 47. Trevor's voice cracked. I don't believe that number is accurate." Martin consulted his notes. "Would you like me to read them individually? We have names, dates, and detailed accounts of each incident." Jennifer Walsh spoke for the first time since entering the office. "Mr. Hamilton, we've also interviewed your staff. They've provided some very interesting insights into your management style." Nicole moved away from the window, approaching Trevor's desk with measured steps. "Gerald mentioned that he tried to verify my reservation through the central system after our encounter. Why didn't you ask him to do that during our conversation?" Trevor felt sweat beading on his forehead. The confirmation number looked fraudulent." "Looked fraudulent how?" Nicole's brown eyes bored into his. "What specifically about a legitimate corporate confirmation number appeared fraudulent to you?" The silence stretched until it became unbearable. Trevor knew that anything he said would damn him further, but the expectant faces around his desk demanded an answer. "I made an error in judgment." "An error in judgment." Nicole repeated the words slowly, tasting them. "Mr. Hamilton, do you believe that error was influenced by my race?" "No." Trevor's denial came too quickly, too forcefully. "Absolutely not. I don't see color. I treat all guests equally." The wrong answer. Nicole exchanged a glance with Patricia that spoke volumes. "You don't see color," Nicole said. "So when you looked at me in your lobby last night, you saw exactly the same thing you would have seen if I were a white woman in a business suit with a legitimate reservation?" Trevor's mouth moved soundlessly. The trap was perfect, and he'd walked into it willingly. "Mr. Hamilton," Patricia's voice cut through his panic, "International Grandeur Holdings has a zero-tolerance policy regarding discrimination. We also have a responsibility to our shareholders, our guests, and our employees to maintain the highest standards of professional conduct. Trevor felt the walls closing in. Ms. Wells, I understand your concerns, but I've been CEO of the Grand Meridian for 4 years. My performance reviews have been exemplary. Guest satisfaction scores. Guest satisfaction scores for white guests, Martin interrupted, consulting his folder. Minority guest satisfaction has declined 23% during your tenure. Nicole walked around Trevor's desk, moving to stand behind his chair. The power dynamic was unmistakable. She was literally and figuratively above him now. Mr. Hamilton, she said, her voice directly behind him, I want you to think very carefully about what happened last night. I want you to remember every assumption you made, every conclusion you jumped to, every moment when you chose to see a threat instead of a guest. Trevor stared straight ahead, afraid to turn around, afraid to meet the eyes of the woman whose career he'd tried to destroy. I want you to remember, Nicole continued, because that memory is going to help you understand why this conversation is happening. She moved back around to face him, her expression unreadable. Mr. Hamilton, what would you have done if I had been a white woman with the exact same confirmation number? The question hit like a physical blow, because Trevor knew the answer, and so did everyone else in the room. He would have made a phone call. He would have verified the reservation. He would have resolved the issue quietly and professionally, the way 5-star hospitality was supposed to work. Send them up, Trevor managed to say. He stood and adjusted his tie, a pewter silk number that had cost more than most people's monthly rent. His hands were trembling slightly, and he clasped them behind his back to hide the evidence of his anxiety. The elevator chimed in the distance. Footsteps in the hallway, multiple pairs, moving with purpose. A knock on his door. Come in. The door opened, and Nicole entered first. For a moment, their eyes met across the expanse of his office, and Trevor felt the full weight of his mistake crash down on him. This wasn't the flustered woman he'd ejected from his lobby. This was Dr. Nicole Carter, Regional Director, holder of advanced degrees, published expert in hospitality management. This was his superior. Mr. Hamilton, Patricia Wells said, her voice cutting through the tension. I believe you've met Dr. Carter. Trevor's mouth felt like cotton. Dr. Carter. Yes. Nicole moved into the office with fluid grace, taking in the space, the leather furniture, the crystal decanter, the view of Chicago that stretched to the horizon. When she spoke, her voice carried the quiet authority of someone accustomed to being listened to. Mr. Hamilton, thank you for making time to see us. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. Trevor nodded, unsure whether to offer them seats or wait to be told what to do. Patricia settled the question by taking the chair across from Trevor's desk. Please, sit, Mr. Hamilton. We have a great deal to discuss. Trevor sat heavily in his own chair, feeling like a student called before the principal. Nicole remained standing, positioning herself near the window where she could observe both Trevor and the view of the lobby far below. Martin Brooks opened his briefcase and removed a thick folder. Mr. Hamilton, we're here to discuss the incident that occurred in your lobby last evening at approximately 6:35 p.m. Yes. I believe there was some confusion about Dr. Carter's reservation. There was no confusion, Nicole said quietly, turning from the window. My reservation was legitimate. You chose to assume otherwise. Trevor's face flushed. Dr. Carter, I had no idea who you were. If you had known I was a corporate executive, you would have treated me differently? Nicole's voice was dangerously soft. Tell me, Mr. Hamilton, how exactly do you determine which guests deserve respectful treatment? The question hung in the air like a blade. Trevor's mouth opened and closed, but no sound emerged. Patricia leaned forward. Mr. Hamilton, in the past 18 months, This property has received 47 documented complaints regarding discriminatory treatment of minority guests. Were you aware of this pattern? 47. Trevor's voice cracked. I don't believe that number is accurate. Martin consulted his notes. Would you like me to read them individually? We have names, dates, and detailed accounts of each incident. Jennifer Walsh spoke for the first time since entering the office. Mr. Hamilton, we've also interviewed your staff. They've provided some very interesting insights into your management style. Nicole moved away from the window, approaching Trevor's desk with measured steps. Gerald mentioned that he tried to verify my reservation through the central system after our encounter. Why didn't you ask him to do that during our conversation? Trevor felt sweat beading on his forehead. The confirmation number looked fraudulent. Looked fraudulent how? Nicole's brown eyes bored into his. What specifically about a legitimate corporate confirmation number appeared fraudulent to you? The silence stretched until it became unbearable. Trevor knew that anything he said would damn him further, but the expectant faces around his desk demanded an answer. I made an error in judgment. An error in judgment. Nicole repeated the words slowly, tasting them. Mr. Hamilton, do you believe that error was influenced by my race? No. Trevor's denial came too quickly, too forcefully. Absolutely not. I don't see color. I treat all guests equally. The wrong answer. Nicole exchanged a glance with Patricia that spoke volumes. You don't see color, Nicole said. So when you looked at me in your lobby last night, you saw exactly the same thing you would have seen if I were a white woman in a business suit with a legitimate reservation? Trevor's mouth moved soundlessly. The trap was perfect, and he'd walked into it willingly. Mr. Hamilton, Patricia's voice cut through his panic. International Grandeur Holdings has a zero-tolerance policy regarding discrimination. We also have a responsibility to our shareholders, our guests, and our employees to maintain the highest standards of professional conduct. Trevor felt the walls closing in. Ms. Wells, I understand your concerns, but I've been CEO of the Grand Meridian for 4 years. My performance reviews have been exemplary. Guest satisfaction scores. Guest satisfaction scores for white guests, Martin interrupted, consulting his folder. Minority guest satisfaction has declined 23% during your tenure. Nicole walked around Trevor's desk, moving to stand behind his chair. The power dynamic was unmistakable. She was literally and figuratively above him now. Mr. Hamilton, she said, her voice directly behind him, I want you to think very carefully about what happened last night. I want you to remember every assumption you made, every conclusion you jumped to, every moment when you chose to see a threat instead of a guest. Trevor stared straight ahead, afraid to turn around, afraid to meet the eyes of the woman whose career he'd tried to destroy. I want you to remember, Nicole continued, because that memory is going to help you understand why this conversation is happening. She moved back around to face him, her expression unreadable. Mr. Hamilton, what would you have done if I had been a white woman with the exact same confirmation number? The question hit like a physical blow, because Trevor knew the answer, and so did everyone else in the room. He would have made a phone call. He would have verified the reservation. He would have resolved the issue quietly and professionally, the way five-star hospitality was supposed to work. I wasn't aware of those numbers. You weren't aware that nearly 50 guests had filed complaints about discrimination? Dr. Rodriguez's voice carried incredulous anger. How is that possible? The complaints were handled at the property level. They were buried at the property level, Nicole corrected, her voice carrying quiet authority. Mr. Hamilton, our investigation found that you consistently dismissed these complaints as misunderstandings or miscommunications, refusing to escalate them to corporate. Montgomery's voice carried the weight of final judgment. Mr. Hamilton, in 30 years of building this company, I have never been more disappointed in a senior executive. Your actions haven't just harmed Dr. Carter, they've damaged our brand, cost us revenue, and exposed us to significant legal liability. Trevor felt tears threatening behind his eyes. Mr. Montgomery, I've served this company faithfully for 4 years. My overall performance. Your overall performance, interrupted board member Thomas Wright, a former federal judge, includes systematically discriminating against guests based on race. That's not just poor hospitality, Mr. Hamilton. It's illegal. The room fell silent again. Trevor could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. Nicole turned in her chair to face him directly. Mr. Hamilton, do you understand why we're here? Trevor met her eyes for the first time since the meeting began. In them, he saw not hatred or revenge, but something worse, disappointment. Because I made a mistake, he said quietly. No. Nicole's voice was firm. We're here because you made 47 mistakes. We're here because you created a culture where discrimination was acceptable. We're here because you forgot that hospitality means welcoming everyone. She stood and walked to the window overlooking Chicago's business district. Mr. Hamilton, I've spent my entire career fighting to create spaces where people like me are welcome. You've spent yours ensuring we feel unwelcome. Trevor felt something break inside his chest. Dr. Carter, if I could take it back. You can't. Nicole turned back to face him. But you can learn from it. Montgomery's voice filled the room like thunder. Mr. Hamilton, the board has reached a unanimous decision regarding your employment with International Grandeur Holdings. Trevor closed his eyes, knowing what was coming. Effective immediately, you are terminated for cause. You will receive no severance package, and your company benefits cease at the end of this week. Your non-compete agreement remains in effect for 18 months. The words hit like physical blows. Terminated for cause meant no unemployment benefits, no recommendation letters, no soft landing in another hospitality position. In an industry where reputation was everything, Trevor Hamilton was radioactive. Additionally, Montgomery continued, IGH will be implementing Dr. Carter's bias training program across all properties within 60 days. We will also be conducting cultural assessments at every hotel in our portfolio. Trevor looked up sharply. Dr. Carter's program? Nicole returned to her seat, her expression unreadable. My master's thesis, Mr. Hamilton. The one I wrote 12 years ago about implicit bias in luxury hospitality. The one that could have prevented everything that happened this week. The irony was devastating. The woman he discriminated against had literally written the solution to his problem over a decade ago. Patricia closed her folder with finality. Mr. Hamilton, you have 1 hour to clear out your office. Security will escort you from the building. Trevor stood on unsteady legs, his world reduced to rubble around him. 4 years of building his career, gone. His reputation in shambles. His future uncertain. As he reached the conference room door, Nicole's voice stopped him. Mr. Hamilton? He turned back, expecting one final humiliation. I hope someday you understand that this isn't about punishing you. It's about protecting everyone who comes after you. Trevor nodded, unable to speak, and walked out of the boardroom into an uncertain future. Behind him, the board began discussing the search for his replacement. Someone who understood that true hospitality meant excellence for everyone. When we face the consequences of our actions, we have a choice. We can become bitter, or we can become better. What moments in your life have forced you to confront difficult truths about yourself? Share your thoughts below, and subscribe for more stories about redemption and growth. In the hallway outside the boardroom, Trevor Hamilton, former CEO, former success story, former man of privilege, put his face in his hands and wept for everything he'd lost and everything he'd never understood. 47 floors below, the Grand Meridian continued serving guests with the same marble elegance and crystal brilliance it always had. But now, everyone would be welcome. Nicole stood at the window of what had been Trevor's conference room, watching Chicago's afternoon shadows stretch across the city. The irony wasn't lost on her. She now occupied the very building where she'd been humiliated 3 days ago, but this time as its interim leader. The room buzzed with quiet efficiency. Aisha Patel sat at the mahogany table, surrounded by laptops and legal pads, implementing the bias training program Nicole had conceived over a decade ago. Jennifer Walsh coordinated with hotel security to ensure a smooth transition of leadership. And Patricia Wells fielded calls from reporters, corporate partners, and industry analysts who'd caught wind of the story. "Nicole," Patricia said, covering her phone's mouthpiece, "Harrison Blackwell is on line 3. He wants to discuss his company's account with IGH. Nicole's jaw tightened. Blackwell, the guest who'd praised Trevor's professional service recovery, in ejecting her from the lobby. Transfer him to legal. If he wants to support discrimination, he can find another hotel chain." Patricia smiled grimly and returned to her call. Nicole's phone buzzed with a text from Denise. "Saw the news. Are you okay? Do you need me to come to Chicago?" The news. Nicole pulled up her laptop and searched for Grand Meridian Hotel discrimination. The story had broken that morning, and the headlines were brutal. 5-star hotel CEO fired for racial discrimination. Luxury hotel chain implements emergency bias training after executive scandal. The $2.3 million cost of discrimination. How prejudice damaged a hotel empire. But it was the social media response that truly staggered her. The hashtag Grand Meridian discrimination was trending, with hundreds of guests sharing their own stories of discrimination at luxury hotels across the country. The incident had become a catalyst for a much larger conversation. "Dr. Carter?" Aisha looked up from her laptop. "We need to make a decision about the staff." Nicole turned from the window. "What kind of decision?" 17 employees have come forward with concerns about Trevor's management style. Some participated in discriminatory practices because they felt pressured to do so. Others, like Gerald, tried to document problems but were ignored. Aisha pulled up a file on her screen. "The question is, how do we handle employees who were complicit in discrimination but claim they were following orders?" The weight of leadership settled on Nicole's shoulders. These weren't abstract policy decisions. They were people's livelihoods, families' financial security, careers hanging in the balance. "What does your assessment tell you?" Nicole asked. "Mixed bag. Some staff members clearly embraced the discriminatory culture. Others were genuinely conflicted but felt powerless to speak up." Aisha scrolled through her notes. Gerald, for example, kept detailed records specifically because he hoped someday someone would listen. Nicole walked to the table and sat across from Aisha. "And the ones who embraced it?" 3 front desk supervisors, 2 concierge staff, and the former assistant general manager. They showed enthusiasm for maintaining standards and made comments suggesting they enjoyed the power of excluding certain guests. Nicole closed her eyes, feeling the burden of judgment. Recommendations. Mandatory bias training for everyone, with successful completion required for continued employment. Those who participated willingly in discrimination get written warnings and probationary periods. Those who documented problems or expressed discomfort get commendations and advancement opportunities. And if someone refuses the training or fails to complete it successfully? Aisha met her gaze steadily. "Then they don't belong in hospitality." Nicole nodded slowly. "Implement it." but I want personal meetings with every staff member who's been here longer than a year. I want to understand how this culture developed and make sure it never happens again." Her phone rang. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize, but the Chicago area code made her answer. "Dr. Carter speaking." "Dr. Carter, this is Rebecca Hamilton, Trevor's ex-wife." Nicole's breath caught. "Mrs. Hamilton, how can I help you?" "I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but—" Rebecca's voice was strained, tired. "Could we meet? There's something I think you should know about Trevor." Nicole glanced at Aisha, who was pretending not to listen while obviously hanging on every word. "Mrs. Hamilton, I'm not sure that would be appropriate. Please. It's about our daughter, Sophie. And it's about understanding why Trevor why he is the way he is." Something in Rebecca's voice, a mother's desperation mixed with genuine remorse, made Nicole reconsider. "Where would you like to meet?" "There's a coffee shop called Grind on Jackson, about 6 blocks from the hotel. I know you must hate him, but there are things you should know before you decide what happens next." Before you decide what happens next. The words echoed in Nicole's mind after she hung up. What did happen next? Trevor was fired, his career destroyed, his reputation in ruins. Justice had been served, accountability enforced. But Rebecca's call suggested there were layers to this story that Nicole hadn't considered. "Aisha, I need to step out for an hour. Continue implementing the training protocols." "Where are you going?" Nicole grabbed her coat from the back of her chair. "To learn something I'm not sure I want to know." The coffee shop was the kind of place that thrived on being deliberately uncorporate: mismatched furniture, local art on exposed brick walls, baristas with intricate tattoos and artistic hair. Nicole ordered a lavender latte and scanned the room until she spotted a woman in her late 30s with shoulder-length brown hair and tired eyes. Rebecca Hamilton looked nothing like Nicole had imagined. She'd expected someone polished, privileged, comfortable with the world of luxury hotels and corporate entertainment. Instead, Rebecca wore a simple navy sweater and jeans, minimal makeup, and the weary expression of someone carrying a heavy burden. "Dr. Carter?" Rebecca stood as Nicole approached. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would." They sat across from each other at a small table near the window. Rebecca's hands wrapped around her coffee cup like she was trying to absorb its warmth. "Mrs. Hamilton," Nicole began, "I want to be clear that nothing you tell me will change what happened. Your ex-husband discriminated against me and dozens of other guests. That can't be excused." "I know." Rebecca's voice was barely above a whisper. "I'm not here to make excuses for Trevor. I'm here because you have a choice to make, and I think you deserve to understand who you're making it about." Nicole frowned. "What choice?" Rebecca pulled out her phone and showed Nicole a photograph, a beautiful 8-year-old girl with dark curls and bright brown eyes, sitting at a piano. "This is Sophie, our daughter. She's been asking why Daddy doesn't live with us anymore, why he seems so sad lately, why he missed her recital yesterday." Rebecca's voice cracked slightly. "I don't know how to explain to an 8-year-old that her father lost his job for being prejudiced." Nicole felt an unexpected pang of sympathy, quickly followed by irritation. "Mrs. Hamilton, your daughter's questions don't change what your ex-husband did." "No, they don't. But there's something else." Rebecca set down her phone and looked directly at Nicole. "Trevor wasn't always like this. When we met in college, he was different. He had a black roommate, Marcus, who became his best man at our wedding. Trevor tutored kids from underprivileged backgrounds. He believed in fairness, in giving everyone a chance." Nicole's expression remained skeptical. "People change." "They do. And success changed Trevor in ways I didn't recognize until it was too late." Rebecca's hands tightened around her cup. The higher he climbed in the hotel industry, the more he started seeing the world through the lens of who belongs where. He started making jokes about certain types of guests, started talking about maintaining the right atmosphere. "Why didn't you say something?" Rebecca laughed bitterly. "I tried. We fought about it constantly. It's part of why our marriage ended. I couldn't stand what he was becoming, but I also couldn't reach the person he used to be." Nicole leaned back in her chair, processing this information. "Mrs. Hamilton, why are you telling me this?" "Because Trevor called me last night. He was crying, actually crying, for the first time since Sophie was born. He said he finally understood what he'd become, and he was horrified by it." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. "He said you showed him a mirror, and he couldn't stand what he saw." "Good. Maybe that will help him become a better person." "Maybe. But Dr. Carter, Trevor is talking about leaving Chicago. Leaving Illinois entirely. Moving somewhere where nobody knows what happened. Starting over in a different industry." Rebecca's voice took on urgency. "If he runs away, he'll never really change. He'll just hide from what he did." Nicole felt the weight of an unexpected responsibility. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" Rebecca reached across the table, her hand stopping just short of Nicole's. "Give him a chance to make it right. Not his job back. He doesn't deserve that. But a chance to face what he did, to learn from it, to become the person he used to be." "How?" "I don't know. But you're the only person who has the moral authority to offer him a path back from this. If he runs away, if he never confronts his own prejudices, then 47 other people suffered for nothing." Nicole stared out the coffee shop window at the Chicago street, watching people hurry past in the October afternoon. Somewhere in this city, Trevor Hamilton was facing the wreckage of his career and the weight of his actions. She had the power to leave him there, broken and bitter, or to offer him something harder than punishment, the chance for genuine redemption. "Where is he now?" Nicole asked quietly. Rebecca pulled out her phone and showed Nicole an address. "He's cleaning out a storage unit where he kept personal items from his office. He has to be out by midnight." Nicole stared at the address, knowing that in the next few hours, she would make a choice that would define not just Trevor's future, but her own principles about justice, mercy, and the possibility of human transformation. Have you ever had to choose between justice and mercy? Between punishment and redemption? Sometimes the hardest decisions we make are about whether to help someone who has hurt us. What would you do in Nicole's position? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective might help others facing similar choices. She stood to leave, her decision not yet made but the weight of it clear. In an hour, she would either walk away from Trevor Hamilton forever, or she would offer him the most difficult gift anyone could give, a chance to earn forgiveness through genuine change. The choice was hers to make. Trevor knelt on the concrete floor of the storage unit, surrounded by the detritus of his former life. Awards, commendations, photographs from industry events, all of it meaningless now. His expensive suit was rumpled, his tie loosened, his usually perfect hair disheveled. In his hands, he held a framed photograph from his first day as CEO of the Grand Meridian. He looked so confident, so certain of his place in the world. The man in that photograph had no idea how far he would fall, how completely he would destroy everything he'd worked for. His phone had been ringing all day, reporters, headhunters, former colleagues offering condolences or fishing for gossip. He'd stopped answering hours ago. The storage unit felt like a tomb for his ambitions. Tomorrow, he would drive to his brother's house in Denver, tail between his legs, and figure out how to rebuild a life from scratch. Maybe construction work or retail management. Something far from the world of luxury hospitality where his name was now synonymous with discrimination. A shadow fell across the entrance to the storage unit. Trevor looked up, expecting to see the facility manager coming to check on his progress. Instead, he saw Dr. Nicole Carter. She stood in the doorway wearing a camel-colored coat over her business suit, her expression unreadable. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "Dr. Carter," Trevor finally said, struggling to his feet. What are you doing here?" Nicole stepped into the storage unit, her eyes taking in the scattered remnants of his career. "I came to ask you a question, Mr. Hamilton." Trevor waited, not trusting his voice. "What are you going to do now?" The question hung between them like a challenge. Trevor looked around at the boxes, the awards, the evidence of a life built on a foundation of privilege and prejudice. "I don't know," he said honestly. "Leave Chicago. Start over somewhere else. Try to forget this ever happened." Nicole nodded slowly. "That's what I thought you'd say." She turned to leave, and Trevor felt something desperate rise in his chest. "Dr. Carter, wait." She paused but didn't turn around. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't change anything, but I need you to know, I'm sorry for what I did to you. I'm sorry for what I did to 46 other people. I'm sorry for what I became." Nicole turned back to face him, her expression softening slightly. "Mr. Hamilton, are you sorry because you got caught, or are you sorry because you finally understand what you did?" Trevor met her eyes, knowing that his answer would define everything that came next. "I'm sorry because I finally understand." Nicole studied his face for a long moment, searching for truth in his words. "Then maybe," she said quietly, "it's time to stop running and start learning." The future hung between them, unwritten and full of possibility. Spring sunshine streamed through the soaring windows of the Grand Meridian's lobby, casting rainbow prisms across the same marble floor where Nicole had been humiliated 6 months earlier. But the space felt different now, warmer somehow, more welcoming. The crystal chandeliers still sparkled with the same elegance, but the atmosphere had been transformed by something more valuable than gold fixtures: genuine hospitality. Nicole stood near the concierge desk, watching the morning check-in process with satisfaction. Gerald Morrison, now promoted to general manager, moved between stations with quiet confidence, ensuring every guest received the kind of personalized attention that had made the Grand Meridian legendary. But now that attention extended to everyone who walked through the doors. "Dr. Carter?" A young voice interrupted her observations. Nicole turned to see Aisha Patel approaching with a tablet and a smile that radiated accomplishment. In the past 6 months, Aisha had become Nicole's closest collaborator, implementing bias training across all IGH properties with remarkable success. "The quarterly numbers are in," Aisha said, her eyes sparkling. "Want to hear the good news?" Nicole grinned. "Always." Revenue is up 23% from last year. Guest satisfaction scores have reached an all-time high across all demographic categories. And we've recovered 78% of the business we lost due to discriminatory practices. Aisha scrolled through her data. The diversity and inclusion program isn't just the right thing to do, it's proving to be incredibly profitable. Nicole felt a surge of pride, not just in the numbers but in what they represented. Any word from the other properties? Remarkable across the board. The Boston location saw a 31% increase in bookings from guests of color. Miami's team reported their highest employee satisfaction scores in company history. And Nicole. Aisha paused dramatically. 3 competitors have reached out asking if we'd consult on implementing similar programs. Seriously. The industry is paying attention. What happened here, what you created, it's becoming a model for luxury hospitality nationwide. Nicole looked around the lobby, remembering the woman who'd been escorted out of this very space 6 months ago. That woman could never have imagined she'd be standing here as regional director, watching her vision for inclusive hospitality transform an entire industry. "Dr. Carter?" Gerald approached, his expression mixing professional pride with personal gratitude. "The 10 a.m. meeting is ready whenever you are." Nicole checked her watch. The 10 a.m. meeting. She'd been both anticipating and dreading this moment for weeks. "Is he here?" Gerald nodded. "Conference room B, as requested." "He's been waiting for about 10 minutes. Nicole took a breath, smoothing her emerald silk blouse, a color she'd chosen deliberately for its association with growth and renewal. "Aisha, would you join me? I might need a witness." They walked through the lobby toward the elevator bank, passing guests from every background imaginable. A family from Mumbai checking in for a tech conference. An elderly black couple celebrating their 50th anniversary. A young Latina businesswoman reviewing presentation notes in one of the comfortable seating areas. What does true change look like in your own life? Sometimes the most powerful transformations happen not through grand gestures, but through daily choices to be better than we were yesterday. Share your own stories of growth in the comments below. You never know who might need to hear that change is possible. This was what Nicole had dreamed of, a space where everyone belonged, where excellence in hospitality meant excellence for all. Trevor Hamilton stood when Nicole and Aisha entered the conference room. 6 months had changed him in ways that went far beyond appearance, though the physical transformation was striking. Gone was the expensive tailored suit, replaced by simple khakis and a button-down shirt. His hair was shorter, less styled, and his face carried lines that spoke of hard-won wisdom rather than executive stress. But it was his eyes that showed the deepest change. The arrogant certainty that had once defined him had been replaced by something harder to achieve, humility mixed with genuine understanding. "Dr. Carter," he said, extending his hand. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me." Nicole shook his hand, noting the calluses that hadn't been there 6 months ago. "Mr. Hamilton, please sit." They arranged themselves around the small conference table, Nicole and Aisha on one side, Trevor on the other. For a moment, the only sound was the distant hum of Chicago traffic 42 floors below. "You look well," Nicole said, and meant it. Trevor smiled, an expression that seemed more genuine than any she'd seen from him during his tenure as CEO. "I feel different. Better, I think, though it's been the hardest 6 months of my life." "Tell me about it." Trevor leaned back in his chair, gathering his thoughts. "After our conversation in the storage unit, I didn't leave Chicago. I stayed, and I started working with the community organizations you recommended. First as a volunteer, then part-time, now full-time." "Doing what?" "I'm a housing coordinator for New Horizons Community Services. We help families find affordable housing and connect them with job training programs." Trevor's voice carried a passion Nicole had never heard from him before. "Most of our clients are people of color, immigrants, single mothers, people I spent years looking down on without even realizing it." Aisha leaned forward. "How has that changed your perspective?" Trevor looked directly at her, his expression serious. "It's taught me that dignity isn't determined by someone's bank account or zip code. I've met families who work 3 jobs and still can't afford a decent apartment. I've seen kids who are smarter than I ever was but don't have access to the same opportunities one took for granted." He turned back to Nicole. "Dr. Carter, I want you to know that I've completed the bias training program you developed. Not because I had to, but because I needed to understand how my mind worked, why I made the assumptions I made." "And what did you learn?" "That prejudice isn't always conscious. I genuinely believed I wasn't racist because I didn't use slurs or join hate groups. But I had absorbed so many unconscious biases about who belonged in certain spaces, who deserved certain treatment." Trevor's voice grew quieter. "The program helped me recognize that impact matters more than intent." Nicole studied his face, looking for signs of performance or manipulation. She found none, only the weariness of someone who'd done difficult internal work. "There's something else," Trevor continued. "I've been speaking at hospitality conferences about unconscious bias. Sharing my story, talking about how successful executives can harbor prejudices without realizing it." Aisha's eyebrows rose. "How's that been received?" Trevor laughed ruefully. "Mixed reactions. Some people walk out. Others thank me afterward for being honest about something they've struggled with privately. It's not easy being the cautionary tale, but if it prevents someone else from making my mistakes." Nicole felt something shift in her chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but recognition. This was genuine change, the kind that came from facing hard truths rather than running from them. "Mr. Hamilton, why did you want to meet today?" Trevor reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. "I wanted to give you this." Nicole opened it to find a handwritten letter on simple stationery. As she read, her expression shifted from caution to surprise to something approaching amazement. "You're donating your severance package to establish a scholarship fund?" "The Trevor Hamilton Scholarship for Hospitality Excellence," he said. "Full tuition for students from underrepresented backgrounds who want to study hospitality management. I can't undo what I did, but maybe I can help ensure the industry has more leaders who look like the communities they serve." Nicole looked up from the letter. "This is your entire severance. What will you live on?" "My salary from New Horizons is enough. I don't need much anymore." Trevor's smile was self-deprecating. "Turns out you can live quite well without a $400,000 salary and a company car." Aisha shook her head in apparent disbelief. "Mr. Hamilton, this is significant." "It's the least I can do." Trevor looked directly at Nicole. "Dr. Carter, I know I can never fully make up for what I did to you and the other guests who were discriminated against. But I hope this is a start." Nicole folded the letter carefully, her mind racing. 6 months ago, this man had publicly humiliated her, questioned her worth, made her feel unwelcome in a space where she belonged. Now he sat before her, transformed by accountability into someone working to dismantle the very systems he'd once perpetuated. "There's one more thing," Trevor said quietly. "I've been working with a therapist who specializes in bias and prejudice. She's helped me understand that my transformation needs to be ongoing, not a one-time event. I wanted you to know that I'm committed to this work for the long term." Nicole stood and walked to the window, looking down at the lobby where their story had begun. The space buzzed with activity. Guests from around the world, staff members from diverse backgrounds, a microcosm of the inclusive hospitality she'd fought to create. "Mr. Hamilton," she said without turning around, "do you know what happened to Harrison Blackwell? The man who praised my professional service recovery? His company lost a $50 million municipal contract when the story broke. Turns out the city of Chicago doesn't do business with organizations that support discrimination." Nicole turned back to face him. "He called me last month, asking for help understanding what he'd done wrong." Trevor winced. "Did you help him?" "I referred him to the same community organizations I recommended to you. He starts volunteering next week." Nicole returned to her seat. "Change is possible, Mr. Hamilton. But it requires more than apologies. It requires action." "I understand." Nicole looked at Aisha, who nodded slightly. They'd discussed this possibility, though neither had really believed it would happen. "Mr. Hamilton, I have a proposition for you." Trevor straightened, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. "IGH is expanding our bias training program to include a speakers bureau, executives who've made mistakes and learned from them, sharing their stories to prevent others from following the same path." Nicole leaned forward. We'd like you to consider joining that program. Paid speaking engagements at hotels, conferences, business schools. Trevor's mouth fell open. You want me to work for IGH again? Not for IGH. With IGH. As an independent contractor, sharing your story and facilitating difficult conversations about bias in hospitality. Nicole's voice was steady, professional. The position would require quarterly evaluations, continued bias training, and oversight from our diversity team. It wouldn't be easy. Dr. Carter, I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it. The industry needs voices like yours, people who've made serious mistakes and done the hard work of change. Your story could prevent countless other incidents like ours. Trevor nodded slowly, tears gathering in his eyes. 6 months ago, I threw you out of this hotel because of my own prejudices. Now you're offering me a chance to help other people avoid making the same mistakes. That's what redemption looks like, Mr. Hamilton. Not erasure of the past, but transformation of it into something useful. Nicole stood, signaling the end of the meeting. Take your time deciding. When you're ready, contact Aisha. As they moved toward the door, Trevor spoke one last time. Dr. Carter? Why are you doing this? After everything I did to you, why offer me this opportunity? Nicole paused at the threshold, considering her answer carefully. Because 6 months ago, you threw a black woman out of your hotel for the crime of existing in a space you didn't think she belonged. Today, that same woman is offering you a chance to ensure it never happens again. She met his eyes directly. That's not just your redemption story, Mr. Hamilton. It's America's. The evening light painted the Grand Meridian's lobby in warm gold tones as Nicole walked through the space one final time before heading home. In a few hours, she would video call her parents in Atlanta, sharing stories of her day and listening to her father's pride in his daughter who'd changed an industry. Tomorrow, she would fly to the West Coast to oversee the opening of IGH's newest property in San Francisco, a hotel designed from the ground up with inclusive hospitality principles. Gerald approached her near the concierge desk, carrying a clipboard and wearing the satisfied expression of a manager whose day had gone perfectly. Dr. Carter, before you leave, the Johnson family wanted me to give you this. He handed her a handwritten note. Nicole opened it to find a message from Dr. and Mrs. Johnson, the Atlanta physicians who'd been discriminated against months before her own incident. Dear Dr. Carter, we returned to the Grand Meridian last week for our anniversary, and the difference was remarkable. From the moment we walked in, we felt welcomed and valued. Thank you for transforming not just this hotel, but our faith in the possibility of change. With gratitude, Dr. James and Dr. Patricia Johnson. Nicole smiled, folding the note carefully. This was why the fight mattered, not just for the grand gestures or industry recognition, but for the couples celebrating anniversaries, the families on vacation, the business travelers who simply wanted to be treated with dignity. One more thing, Gerald said, his expression shifting to something more personal. I wanted to thank you for giving all of us the chance to be part of something better. Nicole looked around the lobby one more time, seeing not just marble and crystal, but the countless interactions that happened here daily, each one now guided by principles of respect and inclusion. Gerald, we all had that chance. We just needed someone to remind us what hospitality really means. As she walked toward the exit, Nicole's reflection caught in the same glass doors that had closed behind her 6 months ago. But this time, she was leaving by choice, carrying with her the satisfaction of work well done and justice fairly served. The evening doorman, a young man named Carlos who'd been promoted from housekeeping after excelling in the new leadership training program, held the door with a genuine smile. Good evening, Dr. Carter. See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow, Carlos. Nicole stepped into the Chicago night, breathing in the crisp spring air. Somewhere in the city, Trevor Hamilton was probably finishing his shift at New Horizons, helping another family find housing, continuing the long work of redemption. Somewhere else, Aisha was reviewing applications for the scholarship fund that would send deserving students to hospitality school. And here, in the heart of downtown Chicago, the Grand Meridian stood as proof that change was possible when people chose courage over comfort. Nicole smiled as she walked toward her car, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to create spaces where everyone belonged. The Grand Meridian's golden lights reflected off the Chicago River as the city settled into evening. Inside, guests from around the world enjoyed the kind of hospitality that recognized no boundaries, only the shared humanity that connected them all. What spaces in your life could use more inclusion? What small action could you take tomorrow to make someone feel more welcome? Sometimes the most powerful change starts with a single decision to see others as they truly are, fellow human beings deserving of dignity and respect. Thank you for joining us on this journey of transformation. Share this story with someone who needs to hear that redemption is possible, and subscribe for more tales of courage, change, and the triumph of human dignity. And in the marble lobby where it all began, the words carved into the wall near the elevator bank caught the evening light. Hospitality is the art of making strangers feel at home. For the first time in years, those words rang completely true. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as interesting as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.